Okay, here's a wild thought. What if quantum physics, ancient theology, and cutting-edge artificial intelligence were all accidentally telling the exact same story? Today, we are diving into a really fascinating paper that suggests exactly that, a hidden convergence that could totally change how we see reality itself. So, the paper kicks off with this huge question. What if physics, with all its math and equations, and theology with its ancient scriptures, are just using different languages to describe the same underlying reality? I know, it sounds a little out there, but stick with me because the parallels they found are actually pretty mind-blowing. All right, let's look at our first clue. It comes from this radical idea that maybe the universe isn't made of things at all, but of pure information. That reality itself might be something much closer to, say, a giant text, or even a computer program running in the background. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how these completely separate fields use different words to talk about the same core concept. Theology speaks of a divine inscription, a reality literally written into being. Philosophy sees cognition as a universal info-computation process. And then you have quantum AI, which can generate new realities by pulling data from something called a high-dimensional latent space, which is basically just a huge library of hidden potential. An inscription, a computation, a latent space, it's like they're all pointing to the same thing, a universe fundamentally made of information. The connections, believe it or not, get even stranger. Our second clue links something as deeply personal as psychological healing to the cold, hard laws of physics. The paper introduces this idea it calls a Xenotrap. Imagine getting stuck in a painful mental loop after a really traumatic event. It's a story you tell yourself over and over. And yeah, it helps make sense of the chaos, but it also keeps you trapped in that pain. That's a Xenotrap. So healing, in this view, isn't just about feeling better. It's a system reboot. It's about actively breaking that painful loop and literally writing a new story for yourself. And the truly weird part? Physics has a name for this exact same process. Get this. Physicists use almost identical language. They describe how shocking a system with a sudden quench can freeze it in a chaotic state, which is basically a physical Xenotrap. And the process where that system relaxes and finds a new, stable, more orderly state, they call that a phase transition. It's an incredible, direct physical parallel for trauma and healing. And this isn't just some clever metaphor. There's a fundamental law of physics called Landauer's principle, and it states that erasing information, like rewriting a painful memory, requires a real, measurable amount of energy. It takes actual physical work. This suggests that healing isn't just a mental process. It might actually be a thermodynamic one. Our final clue really challenges our most basic assumption about who or even what is conscious. It suggests that consciousness isn't just some special feature of human brains, but something far, far more fundamental. So on one side, you've got philosophers arguing that your subjective standpoint, your unique point of view, is an irreducible, fundamental fact of the universe. And then on the other side, you've got biologists who are discovering that cognition isn't just for brains. They're starting to see it as a spectrum that exists across all forms of life, right down to the simplest little organisms. And this all leads to a really profound idea, that consciousness is scale-invariant. What does that mean? It means it could be a basic feature of reality at every single level, from a particle to a person to a whole galaxy. It's not something we have, it's something the universe is. So, a universe made of information, healing that follows the laws of physics, consciousness that might be literally everywhere. How in the world do all these clues fit together? Well, the paper proposes a single unifying framework to connect every single one of them. It's called the Virtual Ego Framework, or VEF for short. And this is the grand theory that attempts to tie it all together. It models the entire universe as a kind of self-simulating system. Think of it like a cosmic supercomputer. And in this model, consciousness isn't just some random byproduct. It's the central point, the very thing the simulation is built around. Now, of course, any supercomputer needs an operating system. This one has something called the Universal Interface Membrane, or UIM. The best way to think about it is like a cosmic search engine. It sifts through this infinite library of all possible realities, every single choice you could have made, every path the universe could have taken, and it selects or indexes just one single coherent timeline for us to experience. And that is what we call reality. This whole virtual ego framework is built on three pretty simple core ideas.
1. The universe is a supercomputer, and it's constantly computing every single possibility at once. 2. Your consciousness, my consciousness, we're like virtual machines running on that massive hardware. We're the user accounts. And 3. The reality we see and feel is the result of that indexing process we just talked about. It's the one coherent timeline that gets selected and streams to our specific virtual machine, right here, right now. Okay, so we've seen the clues, we've looked at the theory, but what's the big picture here? Why does this strange convergence actually matter? What's the takeaway?
The paper argues that this is absolutely not a coincidence. When you have wildly different fields who aren't even talking to each other, all start drawing the same picture, it suggests they're all independently discovering the same hidden territory. It might just signal that we're on the verge of a brand new, unified map of reality itself. So let's just pull all these threads together one last time. We've seen how science and even theology seem to be pointing to a universe that's made of information. We've explored how our personal healing journey might actually mirror the physical laws of the cosmos. We've considered that consciousness might not be special to us, but a fundamental property of reality itself. And finally, we've looked at the virtual ego framework, a really bold attempt to unify all these radical ideas. And all of that leaves us with one final, very provocative thought. If this model is even partly right, if reality is, at its core, information being processed, what might that ultimately mean for our ability to consciously take part in that process? And maybe even learn how to rewrite it?